Hey now, the other day I found a couple of I Have Round roasts on sale, so I couldn't help myself. I picked them up, and it's been well over a year since my first batch of Bresaola, so it's time to get a little bit more of that going. Some of this is for me and some's for a buddy. And I've done a little bit of soul searching, and I think I'm going to tweak my recipe a little bit. So hence the reason for this video. This is the new and improved Bresaola recipe. So let's get started. So the first step here is just to get these out of these cryo bags and hopefully not spill the meat juice everywhere while doing so. Go ahead and slide this out. Set that bag in my meat tub over here, and just using some paper towel, it's going to pad this dry. It's a little bit easier to work with. Oh yeah. A really nice piece of meat here. A little bit more drying. Buy stock in paper towels, people. Now, I don't want to leave this just as is. I'm going to trim this just a little bit. I know that some people with the Bresaola like to have all of the fat off. However, the fat's going to add some nice flavor. I mean, why would you get rid of the fat? What I'm going to do here is just trim off a bit of this sort of extra connective tissue and whatnot. I'm also going to remove some of this sort of silver skin here. I'm just going to trim this off. Okay, there we go. So that took a few minutes to do. However, it removed a bunch of that silver skin that simply would not really be easily chewable, even when sliced super thinly on the old slicer. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside and do the same thing with my second roast here. Okay, here we go. So these are nicely trimmed up. So now I just need to get a weight on these so I can do my calculations for the cure and all of the spices. All right, so I've got everything all measured out here. And so in this bowl, I've got 2.5% kosher salt, 0.5% white table sugar, 0.24%, so that's 0.24% cure number 2. And I'm just going to give this a nice little mix here, get it all combined. And then that I can set aside. And in this bowl here, I've got 0.5% smoked peppercorns, and those are peppercorns that I smoked myself just one time when I was cold smoking some things. I've got 0.075% dried thyme, 0.05% whole rosemary, dried rosemary, 0.05% juniper berries, and 0.3% garlic powder. And I just lost a juniper berry. There we go. And I'm going to take these and set them into my pepper grinder here, spice grinder. And we're going to go ahead and blitz it up a little bit. So that'll help nicely combine it, as well as break up some of those larger chunks just for easier distribution. I'm going to fire that back into that bowl and then mix in the cure, the salt, and the sugar. Mix it up all like this. And now it's time to apply this to the meat. So I've got my roast in here, and I'm going to start sprinkling on these seasonings. I love doing this in this big meat tub because it allows me to try to splash everything on all the way around, and it'll catch any of the splash off, and then I can scoop everything into my vacuum seal bag. So essentially the differences between this and my previous recipe is that I increased the black pepper, the smoked black pepper. You could use just regular black pepper if that's what you have, which I'm sure is what most people have. So I increased that a little bit, as well as the rosemary. And then I don't think I'm going to take this to quite the same weight loss when I go to dry age it. Last time I was around 40%. This time I think I'm going to shoot for about 35% and see if I can wind it with just a slightly softer, moister Bresaola. So there we go. Now I'm just going to prep up my vacuum bag and we can get that sealed up to cure. So it's time to get this into the vacuum seal bag. Sliding right on in. Then, like I said, I'm just going to scoop all the extra cure and seasoning into there. Swash it around a little bit. Just make sure we've got everything in there that we need. I'm freaking out my lovely assistant here. All right. Okay, I'll get this ready and then we'll vacuum seal. So I've just kind of rolled it around a little bit to help some of that extra stuff coat a little bit more evenly. And now we will vacuum seal. And it's important to do this pretty quickly after you've started to apply that cure and the salt, because liquid will immediately start to leach out of the meat. So if you wait like 5 minutes or so, you might wind up having an issue with the liquid trying to suck right out into your vacuum sealer. And I always like to double seal the ends there just to make sure we don't have any leaking issues. So at this point, I'm just going to write down the weight and the date on this here, and we're going to let this go for several weeks just for maximum curing and flavor penetration in the fridge. Here we are hanging out in my crowded little fridge. So every day or so I'm going to come in here and just kind of massage them, flip them around a little bit, and yeah, let them keep sitting in here. I should also mention that one other change was that in the previous recipe I used garlic salt, but I'm using garlic powder this time. So yeah, pretty excited to see how some of these subtle changes might change the finished product. Okay, so after 7 weeks, we are ready to deal with these. We've been ready for a little while, but I thought the extra time would be amazing for getting a lot of sweet flavor into these, oh my goodness, into these roasts. Okay, so I'm just going to use some cold water and try to get stuff all over the camera. Just going to rinse these off a little bit. Oh, do you smell that?
It smells so good.
So good. This is just going to prepare them for casing and netting. Just going to dump out some of that. Another quick little rinse. Now, it's time to get these over to the cutting board, and we're going to pad them dry. Deal with them from there. All right, so we are pretty much dried off there. So I'm going to take some red wine. I've just got a little bit left in this bottle here. I'm going to splash a little bit on because I can't see how wine on this would make it worse. Right? I don't know. Get a little bit.
Does beer make hot wings worse?
See? Good point. Solid point. All right, so we're just going to give that a little rub down, and now I'm going to transfer it to this cutting board, and I have put on a little bit of vinegar just to make it more of a sanitary surface. And then we went and took some peppercorns here and ground them up in the little spice grinder. I'm going to toss that on here. So we've got a little bit of wine flavoring. We've got some extra pepper. I'm extremely excited about how this is going to play out. If I was a little bit more keen, I would maybe bust out the juniper and all kinds of stuff and see what that does. But that's time for another project. I'm just going to get some of this on this fat cap. I might have busted up a little too much pepper.
I'm sure you'll find a use.
We'll find a use for it this weekend. There's a big roast that we're going to have to make. All right. Beautiful. I'm so tempted to put salt on this, but that would be a bad play. It just feels wrong to put pepper on without that. Okay, cool. I'm going to take this. I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to now, unfortunately, have to clean this stuff off and prep it for the collagen casing. Okay, so I've got this collagen casing set up. I'm just going to set the Bresaola on here. All over, fold it up. Actually, before I do that, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and throw some hog rings on here. So I've got all this stuff, quote unquote, sanitized. Vinegar, I'm using the 7% pickling vinegar on this. That wasn't the hog ring, that was my knuckle that cracked. Aging is awesome. Just give this a little twist. Like that. And there's still a lot of air in here, so the fury. I'm gonna just go ahead and poke this like so. And I don't have to be super perfect about this yet, because once I get this netting on here, it's going to compress it quite a bit. And some of these spots that seem to be kind of poofing up now are going to squish down with the netting. Now I am going to, since I've got this sealed up, I'm just going to cut off some of this excess collagen casing. It's unnecessary. And now the netting process, which is the worst, is going to begin. So I'm going to have my lovely assistant here.
Just call me Vanna.
I'm going to have you, if you want to try to just roll that up kind of like a, there you go, perfect. We're going to go in narrow side first. I don't think we're properly capturing this disaster on video right now. However,
you couldn't get this in Magnum size?
Nope. Nothing like some vinegar in the face. My assistant is now blinded.
Disaster.
Yeah, it's a hot mess that we fully expected. Okay, so now I'm just going to twist this netting, and I'm using these half-inch hog rings here, just because this is a larger mass that I'm going over, like the 3/8 when I'm doing salamis or something like that. Nice little twist over here. I find with these, if you just go straight across, these pliers like to catch on the other side, but if you can give it a little twist, you can actually then get it quite a bit tighter. So there we go. And I might just cut off a tiny little bit of this excess. I do want to leave some so that I can hang it and so that I can tie on my weight tag, which I will do in a minute. But first, now that this is compressed, I'm going to go back over it and just kind of push out some of these little air pockets. There's not really much by way of that anymore. There we go. Perfect. Okay, time for a quick wait. So we're all set up here. So I've got my tag here with the date, and my child who was doing the math screwed it up. Waiting for her to argue. Have my original weight and then my target weight. So it was 3175 grams, and then 2064 grams is my target. That's a 35% weight loss, and my stainless hook, and it's time to hit the curing chamber. So here we are. I've got it hanging here. I was going to put it up top, but actually it's too tall for this space. So we're just going to leave it down here, and yeah, I'm going to slide this one back and leave room for the second one. They'll both just hang down over there. Fabulous. And there we are, hanging in the chamber. Horrible view through the glass with the camera here, but everything's looking good. I gave them a little spritz down with vinegar after I hung them, and then probably in a few days I'll give them a little potassium sorbate just to help prevent any sort of mold growth. And yeah, the waiting process begins again. 3 months later, to the day, both of these have hit 30% or 35% weight loss and are ready to come out and be wrapped up, vacuum sealed for equalization. So now, full disclosure here, about a month in, I wound up with some mold issues on here, and it was actually underneath the collagen casing. So I believe what happened, it was probably that the pepper that I had added to this may have allowed for slight air pockets in there and then some eventual mold growth. It did take quite a while for it to start, but there was some slight green mold that I noticed through here, so I had to unwrap the whole thing, vinegar scrub it with a wire brush, and get it all cleaned up. And then I actually sprayed everything down with potassium sorbate, rewrapped, re-netted, and there were no problems since then. I can see that there's a little white mold underneath the casing here, but that's totally not a problem, and in fact will likely be delicious. So for this equalization step, I'm just going to go ahead and take this. I'm still going to leave it in this casing. There's no need to remove it from that quite yet. I'm going to place it inside a vacuum bag here, and we're going to vacuum seal, just like so. There we are, number one. Got a second bag prepped up here. I'm going to go ahead, seal that up. Perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and simply write the type of meat. So we're going to go with Bresaola and the date on here. Got these things labeled. I can toss them into my keezer and let them equalize, just because the outside will likely be a little bit firmer than the inside. So we're going to try to have that level out as much as possible. Probably give it a couple of months in the keezer to do so, and then we can actually go ahead and cut into this and see how it tastes. It's been 4 months, longer than I needed. Probably could have got away with 2 on this, but I had some other Bresaola I was eating anyway, so I just let this continue to equalize. So it's time to open this, slice into it, and rip her through the slicer to taste. Whoop! Look at that. Beautiful. Let's see how it slices. Look at that. Beautiful little slice. Let's get a bunch of them. Ooh, little slice. Let's give this a whirl. That's disgusting. They didn't expect that. Oh. I just love a little bit of fat running through that. So good. I'm very, very pleased with the slight adjustments I've made to this recipe. Extremely flavorful. All the herbs, the rosemary, the thyme, the juniper, all of it. It's absolutely amazing. Definitely part of the regular charcuterie repertoire around here. So yeah, until next time, keep it 11.